Hey everybody, this is Sarah Mastros from the Fool's Dog. Today I'm gonna do a little bit of a deck show and tell. I'm eventually gonna do these for all of our decks. I'm gonna start with what I think of as sort of the default deck, right? The Smith Rider Waite. But before I do that, I'll show you. So here I am in the Explore menu in my decks, right? And I'll show you just all the decks that we carry. So you can see it's quite a long list, right? And again, eventually I will show you all of these decks in these little show and tell videos, right? But for now, we are going to look at the classic Smith Rider Waite, sometimes called RWS, Rider Waite Smith, sometimes just called Rider Waite. So I think for most people, at least for most Americans, when they imagine a tarot deck, this is probably the deck that they're imagining, right? So this deck is from 1909. The author's name is Arthur Edward Waite. He was one of the founders of the Golden Dawn, which was an important magical lodge in the, as we would say, occult revival at the beginning of the last century, right? So around 1900. Right, this deck, I believe, came out in 1909. The artist's name is Pamela Coleman Smith, also called Pixie Smith. So in her day job, she was a costume designer and a set designer for the theater. And I think that really comes across in these cards, right? I think she does a great job of telling like a complete story with what are actually quite simple illustrations, right? And then Rider is just the name of the publisher, right? So again, here we have the suit of pentacles, right? I'm particularly fond of this 9 of pentacles with the woman in the yellow dress, right? Here in swords, it's interesting that the 3 of swords is one of the only cards without a character on it. The 4 also doesn't exactly have a character. I understand this guy here laying on top to actually be like a decorative part of, like that's a statue and not a human, but it depicts a knight laying vigil before he's made knight, right? But the 3 of swords here, right, which often indicates betrayal, is one of the only cards that doesn't have characters on it here, right? And so here we have the suit of cups, right? I particularly like the 3 of cups here. It's sort of reminiscent of the 3 graces, right? Here we have the suit of wands, right? The 4 looks like it doesn't have characters on it, but it does here. They're just kind of small and in the middle. So the 8 of wands, I believe, is the only other minor arcana card that doesn't have a character on it, not including the aces, right? Which have those hands, but those aren't exactly characters. Right, and then here we have the major arcana, right? So this is the Smith Rider Waite RWS deck. We used to call it our classic 1910 because this is a scan of that original 1910 or 1909 printing, I believe. Right, so thank you very much. That is our show and tell for Smith Rider Waite.